Georgia, back-to-back national titles, and now, Sam, we're talking about them potentially three-peating, man. And I think they're gonna do it. I don't know about you, but I feel like nobody's gonna stop Georgia this year, even if they get one loss. As long as it doesn't happen in the playoffs, I feel like they're gonna go all the way, man. Like I just feel like with Carson Beck at QB, it's like a passing of the torch. I saw him going off in the spring game, and one thing about it, I pride myself on being unbiased, but we are always going to be biased when it comes to brothers from the 904. And I've actually seen Carson Beck play like in person. Like he was going crazy. He was going crazy against Shaheem Singletary and them boys, man. Like first quarter was a blowout, and even though my school still won, like he still was going crazy after the first quarter. It's like he was playing like a man possessed. Now he isn't crazy athletic, but he does have enough athleticism that you have to account for it. And I feel like Georgia now, the narrative that Georgia doesn't have talent at receiver, like they're finally utilizing the transfer portal. They lost A.D. Mitchell. They got Dominic Lovett from Missouri. He's probably the best receiver that they done picked up from the transfer portal. And then you got Lab McConkey coming back, and you still got Brock Bowers, and you already know how talented Georgia is up front. Like me and you off camera a couple of days ago, we're talking about the size of their offensive line for their incoming recruiting class. So it's like you messing with some monsters up front, man. Like I just don't think
Yeah.
that nobody in college football right now is equipped to handle what Georgia has up front. And I know everybody makes it about stars, but Georgia just recruits different caliber offensive linemen. Like they are recruiting freaks. People go look at Georgia's incoming recruiting class with their offensive linemen. Like I think the lowest weight that they had was 315, man. They got
It's
people that's like six
insane.
seven, 6'8", like massive human beings that are all super athletic. So it's like I don't really think that no team really is equipped to go toe to toe with Georgia up front.
Yeah. Um I mean, I what do you call it? This is just an opinion because I think there's a lot of validity to the claim that Georgia's going to win it all. Even my own Wolverines, who I think are better and are going to be better than Georgia, again, football's a game of matchups, and matchups aren't matchups are in Georgia's favor against Michigan. They're heavily in Georgia's favor. So I look and um I just don't think they're going to do it. I don't think they're going to go three in a row. I don't. I think all in all that this team, Georgia, is going to go 12 and 0. They're going to win the SEC. I actually think that Carson Beck is going to break the Georgia school record for passing yards in a season. He's going to shatter Stetson Bennett's record that he had last year in fewer games because I don't have them winning at all. In fact, I don't have them even reaching the national championship. And that is because there's one team who I have absolute faith wouldn't just beat Georgia, but would beat them to a pulp that would emasculate them on national TV. It's not Michigan. That would be a biased take because schematically Michigan does not have the receivers to behead the Bulldog defense. But you know who does? And you know who returns their O line? And you know if they have healthy running backs? And you know who's going to have an elite defense? There's a lot of what ifs here, especially the defense, but I believe in this. The Ohio State Buckeyes, if they match up again in that semifinal, which I'm predicting they will, game over. The game it'll be like 2020 Clemson versus Ohio State after they lost the previous year last minute. They will be assassinated the minute they take the field. So if you don't face Ohio State, by all means, you're probably winning it. Like even though again I think Michigan's better, that doesn't factor in matchups. Like because that's at least according to power rankings. And I'd say Michigan, Georgia, slightly lean Georgia, or 50-50, maybe slightly lean Michigan, but I wouldn't be confident picking either. It'd be a really great even game, in my opinion. Ohio State, Georgia, unless Ryan Day does something really stupid and more than once, they should beat him. But their O line is just huge, like what you said. And they return Cedric Van Pran. Defensively, they're going to plug and play. Their secondary should get better, which might prove what I think about Ohio State being wrong because Georgia should have better defensive backs. They could go 15-0. They could win it all. And unlike the past two seasons, or unlike 2021 at least, I wouldn't be surprised.
Man, the only team that really scared me, honestly, I mean, Ohio State is up there. I did say that Ohio State was the biggest threat to Georgia's three-peat, but I feel like they also could lose a game to Bama in the SEC championship game and still get in. But it's like, I feel like they can beat Ohio State. I feel like it could go either way because we remember how last year's semifinal matchup went. Many people consider that to be the real national championship. But I think that Georgia, with the fact that you pretty much should still have good play calling with your OC and Mike Bobo taking over. And then you still have the fact that you have some really talented quarterbacks. As a matter of fact, you got more talent at QB than what you had with Stetson Bennett. No disrespect, but a lot of people would tell you that Georgia was one of the few teams in history to win a national championship with their most talented QB being a backup. But Stetson Bennett, he was really good. He was a gamer. He was a really good fit in Todd Monken's offense. But Carson Beck has a way stronger arm than Stetson Bennett, and all these other guys, they are just a little bit more bigger than Stetson Bennett also. But Stetson Bennett had a lot of heart. I'm not saying this to disrespect them, but you got QBs that got way more talent than what Stetson Bennett had, and plus you're giving those guys weapons on the outside like Dominic Lovett, and you already know their defense, their secondary is arguably one of the best in college football. So they match up well with Ohio State because Ohio State does have good receivers. And if you want to beat Georgia, you got to have receivers that can challenge that secondary, and you got to have good QB play. But I'm not counting out them. It's just I got to see what their QBs. At least with Ryan Day, I know that his quarterback situation shouldn't really be too much of an issue because both of the two guys they got competing should be pretty solid.
Yeah. Oh, the both schools will have great talk about Ohio State and Georgia. Both will have great quarterback play. I think Georgia. What do you think about this? Do you have a weakness for the team? Not a weakness as in something that's they're bad at, but an area on the team where it doesn't fit in, or it's the weak link in the chain.
I got one. They need to stop racing. They not in that. They not NASCAR drivers. They need to drive the speed limit and stop getting in trouble with them speeding tickets and everything off the field. Honestly,
Yeah, it's actually, you know what? It's a really good point that I'm going to keep in my mind, in my back folder. I think if that doesn't stop, like, I think that could be a sign of arrogance if it doesn't stop. If it just continues and it's never addressed, that could be a pride thing that just bites him in the butt randomly. I was going to go on the field, but your answer tells me, and it's a fair answer, that you don't think they have any on the field
well, I
problems.
mean, on the field, I feel like maybe quarterback. I'm not saying it's a complete weakness, but I mean, you never know what you're going to get early out the gate with a young QB. And plus, it's like going on the road is different. You got to play Tennessee on the road. That's going to be a really hostile environment. But it's not like I'm concerned. Like, I got 10 out of 10 confidence in Carson Beck. Matt Jones was kind of a similar way. And I kind of feel like Carson Beck, his situation is a little bit similar to how Mac Jones' situation played out, waiting for a couple of years, and then the year that he takes over, he ends up having a really good squad around him. So I think Carson Beck's going to be fine. I don't really have any concerns about Georgia. Like, I just feel like for Georgia, even if they have some games that they almost lose, I feel like they normally play their best football against their best competition. And sometimes they do play down, but I don't really have any concerns about this team really outside of playing Bama and Ohio State. That's really where I feel like they won't lose because they have like major weaknesses, but I feel like they probably would lose just because like you're playing with two evenly matched teams. Alabama's going to get theirs. You feel me? You're not just about to treat Alabama like they roadkill or anything. You feel me? They still
Yeah.
a threat. So for Georgia, I really feel like Alabama, due to Nick Saban and the talent they have, they get QB right. They got a shot to take down Georgia in the SEC championship or Ohio State.
Yeah. Um, for me, it's it's not a big concern because they have a really good O line. For me, it's just running back. I think Georgia's like the perfect example of a team where the running backs look good statistically because there's wide open holes, but that's not really a problem anyway, and they still have good backs. We talked about this off air, but I want to hear it again. What do you think about LSU versus Georgia rematch SEC championship game?
I still like Georgia. I don't really know about LSU. Like, I don't think they're going to be down or anything. I still feel like they'll be a 9-10 win team or better this year, but maybe they might have just found a little bit of fire early because the rest of the SEC West is way more competitive this year. So I think that LSU is going to be tested way more. And I do remember them getting smacked and blown out by Tennessee. You feel me? And the way they did beat Alabama, it's like you're playing Alabama on the road in Tuscaloosa. You feel me? So it's like for LSU, like they really want to get tested this year. I'm not saying last year what they did was a fluke, but I'm just saying like this year, I kind of feel like people may just have too high expectations for Brian Kelly in year two just because of the fantastic year one they had. And we've seen plenty of coaches have amazing year ones and then kind of fall off a little bit, i.e., Mel Tucker. But it's like, I look at Georgia. I just feel like Georgia is just a little bit more there up front than LSU, even though I don't think LSU is going to get blown out and ran out the building like how they did last year. But I feel like it probably will be a more closer competitive game, but I probably still would take Georgia.
Yeah, I'd agree with you there. There's just too many questions in the trenches for LSU. I will say, though, they have the best defensive tackle room in the nation. So if we're going to find out how good those running backs are from Georgia, line them up against LSU's D tackles, and we'll see firsthand.
Yeah, LSU, they definitely do have some monsters on defense. They have Mason Smith, who could be a potential second, first round pick in next year's draft. I love his game a lot. And then they also got Harold Perkins, who was a freshman phenom last year. And they
Yep.
did add a lot of talent in the secondary, but it's kind of still leaning Georgia in my head for me, just because, like, I just think for LSU, I still feel like they're a program that's still ascending. I don't think they don't have a shot at beating Georgia. Like I said, I feel like they can give them a competitive game, but they got some monsters. But I think Georgia at the end of the day is still probably going to be able to prevail. They just have so many talented players on defense, especially in that secondary. But like I said, like LSU can give them a close game, and I wouldn't be surprised if LSU pulled off the upset. But I kind of like Georgia. I just
Yeah.
feel like the only team really capable of beating Georgia this year is probably Alabama and Tennessee. Probably the only reason I give the Vols a shot is because they are hosting Tennessee. Well, they're hosting Georgia at home this year. They don't have to go on the road, so maybe Georgia could come out a little bit flat in that game or something like that happens. But I really feel like the two teams with the best chance of beating Georgia or Ohio State and Alabama. But I really like Georgia to get their third this year.
Yeah.